If you're tired of overgiving, of shrinking yourself to be chosen, of feeling like love, peace, or abundance is something you have to earn, I want you to know this. You're not broken. You're just unpracticed in believing you matter. There is a way to live differently. And this is exactly why I created You Matter, an 8-week, soul-deep course to help you remember your worth, reclaim your power, and rewrite every relationship in your life, starting with the one you have with yourself. Enrollment is now open. You can find more information on my website, www.lindsaymorlock.com. Come walk with me on this journey, and I'll show you how your worthiness was never up for debate. The world is waking up, and you finding your way here today is no coincidence. The spirit world always has a way of guiding us where we most need to be at the absolute perfect time. I'm your host, Lindsay Morlock, and you're listening to the Guided Podcast, where we explore how the spirit world works on our behalf to guide us along our paths. This is where you'll learn how to live a life that is both conscious and connected, so you can supercharge your pathway to healing and open to life's magic and miracles. Come along this journey to see how guided you truly are. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to this season of the Guided Podcast. Today, I'm bringing you into the truth of my journey, the journey of coming back home to myself. It's a journey my soul knew it needed to take, and it knew exactly what it was doing, and yet I had absolutely no idea what I was walking into. It looked nothing like the dream my mind had conjured up, but as I'm coming to learn, what I have in my mind and where spirit is leading me and leading my heart don't always look identical. If you've been following my journey, you know I quit my job as a corporate chief operating officer in order to become a spiritual entrepreneur. And I sold my condo in New Jersey. I packed up my life. I moved across the country to Arizona, first to Sedona, and then eventually to Prescott. And what I didn't share was what happened inside of me when I arrived in Sedona. If you've been listening to the podcast, you'll know that I've shared pieces of myself, pieces of that journey, lessons that had been fully grokked and polished in order for me to communicate them with you. But now, on the other side of this experience, it's really time for me to share with you the unvarnished truth of what it really took for me to find a new home within myself, and what it really took to find this truer inner experience of the heart. Because when your soul is ready, life moves quickly. But it took 4 years for me to be ready to be ready. 4 years to be spiritually, emotionally, and physically prepared to take this leap and even move to Sedona. And even though I was scared, once I was ready, everything fell into place like clockwork. My condo sold in days. I had multiple offers on it. The movers, the car shipping company, every single detail lined up like fate had paved the road for me. So I knew with every cell in my body that moving to Arizona was the next right path. It's like spirit had laid out the yellow brick road for me. And my mentor and my friend had offered me a room to rent in her home in Sedona. And that felt like such a gift because Sedona is very expensive, and I had just changed everything in my life, my income, my identity, my home, my physical location, my career. I wasn't just making one small change at a time. I was taking all the parts of me that felt stable and throwing them away for uncertainty and instability, basically. And so before I left New Jersey, Spirit would remind me, don't assume that your circumstances are going to be a negative reversal. And I know that that tape was playing in the back of my mind on repeat, and Spirit was bringing it to my attention for me to see because our beliefs are powerful. But in the back of my mind, I kept replaying, am I going to have enough money to make this transition? Did I save enough? Would the money from the sale of my home be enough to help me through this transition? Was I going to be able to sustain my income in this new business, working for myself, or was that going to dry up? Would my business be successful? Was I going to have enough clients? How was I going to afford to buy another home again without a W-2 or predictable income or salary? My mind was spiraling with questions. But I was in this half-hearted place of trust. I believed that I was trusting where I was headed, but I was also in deep fear and resistance about how this journey was going to unfold. And I really assumed the worst, honestly, because the thing no one tells you, you can move across the world, but still be carrying your pain. You can't outrun your patterns. And even when you're running towards your dream, you still bring all your baggage with you, even if you're temporarily diluted by the glitter of the dream that feels like gold for you. I had done so much inner work leading up to the Sedona move. I thought I had healed. I thought I was ready. And to be truthful, I was ready. But I was ready for what I thought was coming, not what actually happened. Because what came next was nothing short of a reckoning. In hindsight, this wasn't just a move, it was a reclamation of my soul. This journey was about remembering my worth. It was about finding a place of inner resourcing, of finding that deep safety and security within. It was about learning how to stop abandoning myself by coming face to face with all the ways I was consistently leaving myself. This was about being stripped of every single thing I used to prove that I was enough. This was about losing my grip on who I thought I was so I could finally meet the truth of who I really am. Sedona was and is blindingly beautiful. If you've ever been there, you will know exactly what I'm talking about. You can even Google it and pull up pictures and see the majestic beauty that is Sedona. The red rocks, the deep blue sky, the kind of full moons that stop you in your tracks and make you feel like you're the only person on the earth because the light just illuminates the entire desert and the backdrop of the mountains. And yet on the inside, here I was in this gorgeous place and I felt blank. I moved into this manufactured home in Sedona. And in hindsight, I share that with you because I see how symbolic that was. This beautifully ordinary house surrounded by this almost supernatural and stunning landscape in a town that's predominantly transient in nature, but deeply wealthy at that. And this home that I moved into was big and spacious, 4 bedrooms, 2 living rooms, couple bathrooms. And it was a property that sat on several acres. And after the first month of being there, my roommate actually moved out to her new home, and the movers came and took almost everything with them. So what remained was a couch, a desk, my bedroom furniture, a few kitchen basics, some art still hanging on the walls. Even the internet, in this particular location in Sedona was spotty because we couldn't even get normal service there. And without that Wi-Fi connection, I didn't even have cell phone service. So this was the ultimate mirror of disconnection. And the rest of the house that I was living in was stripped bare. And so was I. What was left? This woman, me, sitting in a shell of a home, stripped of my job title, my salary, my identity. I was removed from friends. I was removed from family. I was removed from stable internet connection and cell phone service, right? I was removed from my sense of safety and any sense of control. I had stripped myself of everything I thought made me me. I had sold my home in New Jersey and I didn't realize how much worth I had placed in being a homeowner. I was 40. I had just started renting a room, living with a friend. And even though it was a choice I made, it triggered something within me. It felt like I had taken a step back, somehow like I had failed. And I was across the country far from family, far from friends. And even though Sedona has a community, I really didn't plug in beyond one group membership and one friend that I made there because I didn't really have the bandwidth. I was completely overwhelmed. I was overwhelmingly emotional. I was grieving my old life, even though I had relinquished it by choice. I was pretending to friends and family, honestly, that I had it all together, that I was so excited to be in this new place. And while there was truth to that, and in some ways I did do really well there, the transition of it was consistently challenging. And although I kept telling myself I was trusting the path, I was deep down really scared that maybe I didn't actually follow my intuition and I had made a huge mistake. I thought leaving the corporate world was going to feel liberating. I thought becoming a spiritual entrepreneur would feel expansive, but I didn't feel expansive. I felt like I was suffocating. I was offering people my services like breath work and hand analysis and coaching, and I loved my clients. And yet I didn't feel like I had a clear direction or a purpose. Client work was available, but it was very slow. And I didn't realize how much confidence I had tied up in my former work life, how much my job title had propped me up, maybe not even so much because of the title of COO itself, but rather because it communicated the appearance of someone who was successful, of someone who made it. So I didn't know how much importance that title carried until I no longer had it. I didn't realize how much owning my home had given me a sense of pride. I was single. I had achieved that purchase and that milestone on my own. It was something that I was really proud of. And yet when I gave it up and moved in with my friend, I felt like I had somehow taken a step back. I wanted to move forward. I wanted to live my dream, but I wasn't interested in having to sacrifice for it. And every time I felt like I was sacrificing, or in self-sacrifice, I found myself questioning why my life in New Jersey wasn't enough for me. Why did I feel like I needed to leave it all behind to move forward in pursuit of a dream that left me feeling like I had moved backward? Why couldn't I just be quote unquote normal and enjoy a perfectly good, stable, predictable life? But I couldn't because that life to me felt mediocre. It wasn't enough for me. And I wanted to feel deep passion. I wanted to feel deeply fulfilled and satisfied by the life I was living on a soul level, not by what my life looked like from the outside in. And that's what I was truly in pursuit of. But every time I reviewed my finances, I'd find myself in both a fear and shame spiral, questioning my value, questioning my life, questioning whether I was actually enough to live the life I was trying to build. So instead of claiming the life that I was wanting to live, telling people about my new work, I found myself reverting, telling people about my old job because I didn't know how to explain my new one, because I didn't want to be met with quizzical looks as people were trying to wrap their brain around how I help people. But really, I was hiding because I didn't feel anchored in my new work. I didn't feel anchored in my new life. I didn't feel clear. I felt disconnected from what I was doing. So instead of building a business in Sedona, I completely unraveled. I spiraled. I circled the drain consistently of shame and scarcity and fear. I woke up every morning and beat myself up. Why aren't you working harder? Why aren't you bringing in more income? You've done this before. You've literally built successful businesses for other people. Why can't you do it for yourself? What's wrong with you that you can't just be happy with yourself and your life? Why is nothing ever enough? Why are you never enough? This was the programming, rinse and repeat. I had a to-do list that didn't move for 8 months because I wasn't in business building mode. I went into this dark cocoon, and everything in me, every identity, every survival strategy, every illusion of control had to dissolve into the goo. Sedona broke me down. My nervous system was shot. Spirit kept telling me, reassuring me over and over again, it's safe to rest. It's safe to let go. We've got you. Let yourself detox from this old life and just enjoy being in this world in Sedona, doing what you want to do. You get to rest. Let go of control. We've got you. This time period is about resting. But I couldn't trust that. I couldn't let go of control. I couldn't let go of the worry. I was worrying constantly about money, not because I didn't have it. I actually had plenty of money from the sale of my home. I had savings, but I didn't want to need it. I didn't want to tap into those funds because in my mind, success meant being fully self-sufficient by this new business. And because that wasn't happening yet, I felt like I was failing. It felt irresponsible to use that money on myself for some pipe dream. I thought using this money on me was a risk that I was going to want some sort of money back guarantee on. I wasn't believing in myself. And with every passing day, my beliefs of not being enough in every area of my life seemed to hold more and more weight, more and more heaviness. Every day, feeling like a failure became the norm and just became another ounce of shame weighing down my inner world, creating even greater disconnection and greater despair. So I punished myself. I wouldn't let myself turn the heat up above 65 degrees, not because I couldn't afford it, but because I didn't want to need anything. I literally carried a space heater around the house from room to room like it was a water bottle so that I didn't actually need to use propane. And I wore that suffering like a badge of honor. That's how far the shame went. I think some part of me believed that this is how I deserved to live after making the choices I had made. I didn't believe that the propane people were going to come refill the tank when I actually needed more propane either. So there was this sense of scarcity, this sense of I'm not going to have what I need when I need it, that only continued to contribute to the fear. And the irony, in the absence of business, in the absence of clients, in the absence of a clear focus or clear direction, in the absence of knowing what to do with myself, how to spend my time, how to hold myself through the emotions, here's what I was actually doing every day. I was paying $500 to rent a house that should have cost me probably $4,000 a month. Sure, I didn't have a ton of belongings there, but I had everything I needed. I was hiking in Sedona every single day, taking in the perfect weather, the sunny days, the blue skies. I was receiving the breathtaking scenery. I was surrounded by beauty, receiving Sedona's healing energy on the daily. I was drinking my coffee while watching hot air balloons peacefully glide over my head as the sun rose each morning. I was talking to spirit. I was diving into my inner world, focusing on my healing. New intuitive gifts were starting to emerge. And the grace and space from spirit helping me to rest and recover from my former life, especially my corporate life, they were helping me to settle my nervous system. And the home I was in, it was a blank slate. It was ready for a life of my own making. It was ready for me to paint my own walls. And so when you hear my reality on the daily, my time in Sedona was an absolute gift, right? When you really reflect back on the truth of what I was experiencing, it was an abundant situation, but because my mind was in such turmoil, my inner world was in pure distress. My ego was running the show. My consciousness had fallen asleep at the wheel. And while I was using my spiritual tools and quote unquote doing the work, I realized I wasn't actually able to embody what spirit was asking me to do. Spirit's asking me to relax my mind, to stop worrying, to trust, to allow myself this time to rest and enjoy and be at peace with what's going on around me. But my mind would not let me settle. It would not let go of control. And I couldn't feel at peace if I didn't have something to do. If I wasn't being productive, I didn't feel valuable. I didn't feel like a fully functioning person if I couldn't work the long, hard hours I was used to that proved that I was worthy. I felt like I had to pretend to work, even if I wasn't being productive, so that I could at least feel like if everything ultimately failed, at least I had tried. But I was beating myself up because I wasn't even making progress to the extent that I felt like I could really look at myself and say, well, you gave it your best shot. I felt like I wasn't even trying hard enough. But I was so paralyzed by my fears and this new life that I couldn't say that. I wasn't trying. I was circling the drain and going round and round with emotions. And I'd process my emotions and I'd reset only to find myself in another spiral shortly thereafter. I couldn't get myself out of the cycle of shame and blaming myself for grieving a life that I had chosen to give up. So after months of spiraling, after months of feeling like I wasn't making any progress with my business or my finances, feeling like my life wasn't changing, wasn't looking the way I had wanted it to look, as I continued to watch my bank accounts dwindle without tangible evidence of my situation improving and without feeling connected to community and feeling like no matter how much I worked on myself, no matter how much effort I put into my healing to take these big, bold leaps, I'm just never happy. It was this awareness of like, no matter what I do, I'm never sustainably happy. And being with that reality in my body felt tremendously heavy. And in that hopelessness, everything just snapped one day. I was in the kitchen. I literally collapsed to the floor in tears, in fetal position. I called my friend from college. It was midnight on the East Coast, and by some miracle, she picked up the phone. And I just said to her, I can't do this anymore. No matter what I do, no matter how hard I try, it's never enough. I can't do this anymore. I don't want to do this anymore. I feel like I'm done. And I know I've wanted to kill myself before, but this time I really feel it. I just can't do this anymore. I'm never going to be happy. No matter how much I try, no matter how hard I work, I'm just a miserable person. And I know you can probably hear my voice start to crack as I say this because it brings me back to that moment and the feeling of the weight in my heart, the weight of the shame. And I continued to share with her, I kept thinking that my life would be different, that one day I could get off the struggle bus, but this is just going to keep being my life. I think I'm making progress and then I'm right back in the gutter. Nothing I do is ever sustainable, and I can't even tell anyone how I really feel because I don't want my family to think that they were right, that my intuition to move here was wrong. And not everyone in my family felt that way, but it mattered to me that they believed that I could trust myself and make good decisions for myself. Even in that, I was looking for approval. And in that moment, my friend didn't try to fix it. She didn't panic. She just listened. She validated my feelings. She just held space for me to be fully present with what I was going through. And we certainly exchanged some words and had a conversation. I told her I wasn't going to do anything to myself, that night. I promised her that. And when we hung up, I had just enough light left in me to keep going. But the next day I woke up and I still felt it, that despair, that emptiness, that hopelessness. And I made a decision. I drove to this lookout spot in Sedona. It's the place in Sedona that people go when they want to jump. And I stood there in the middle of the day. So there were people around. I knew there was a certain safety around what I was doing. But I was staring over the edge and I thought, is this it? Is this how it ends? Could I really do this? Could I really jump? And as I looked in that ravine, I was like, this just does not look fun. This does not look like a pretty way to go. And I realized I was never going to be able to do it. I was never going to be able to end my life. I didn't have it in me. And somehow that brought up even more shame because it made me feel like I wasn't even brave enough to die. But standing there, staring into that ravine, I made a decision. And I said to myself, you are not going to kill yourself. You're never going to do it. So stop entertaining the thoughts that you are. And that was the day that I made the pact to stop giving my ego that kind of power. And even though I made that pact, I wobbled, right? Sometimes I could feel my thoughts slipping back into those scary places. And then I would try to bring myself back to presence, to center. And a day or two later, after all this happened, my mentor, my roommate, who had moved, called. And she said her guide had told her that I needed to come stay with her in Prescott for a week, that I needed to be pulled out of Sedona. And she said, you can't get out of the fire while you're still in the fire, right? And Sedona was the fire. The energy there amplifies whatever you are feeling. So if you're feeling good, you're feeling great. That's amplified. But if you're not feeling good, that is amplified. So she was calling me to pull me out of the fire. So I went to Prescott. I stayed with her for the week. And when I got there, I told her what had happened. And she said, you know what? If you want to exit this lifetime early, talk to Spirit about it. Ask them if they'll let you take the next exit out. It was an interesting response. It was one of those responses that stopped me in my tracks. She wasn't telling me not to do it. She was also not telling me to do it. She was telling me to have a conversation with Spirit about it. And so that's what I did. I went into my room. I went inward. I talked to Spirit. And I prayed and I asked my guides, can I leave this lifetime early? Can I take the next exit ramp out of here? And they said, no, you need to stay alive. You're needed on this planet. And actually, I was sort of annoyed in the moment, if I'm being honest, because I was still in pain. And I kind of begged them in that moment, well, if I have to be here, then I really need you to show me the way because I cannot and will not keep living like this. I'm miserable. And so Spirit told me in that moment that I needed to learn how to more efficiently process my emotions, to understand their messages, and to really move the emotion out of my body so that I could stop marinating in all my dark and twisty thoughts about my emotions. And the shame came over me again when they shared this message with me, because this is literally what I was teaching other people how to do, how to process their emotions. And now Spirit was telling me that I wasn't even doing that right. And then shortly thereafter, my mentor told me the same thing, that not only was I not processing my own emotions properly, but I was also teaching my students incorrectly. It was like shame, 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 more shame, right? And so the more shame stirred within me, the more hopeless I started feeling. I started feeling like, great, even this new job that I'm doing as a spiritual entrepreneur, I'm not even doing a good job at that. Like, what am I actually doing with my life? And so I spent a lot of time alone that week in solitude with Spirit. And it was a choice point. If I had to stay alive on this planet, I knew I couldn't live this way. I was so sick and tired of going around and round like this. And something in me clicked. I was just going to need to take responsibility for making the changes I wanted to make. So that week changed me. It led me to make a definite decision that I needed to take great responsibility for my ego mind, for my emotions, and for how I was moving through my life. No more spiritually bypassing pain. It was time to get real and honest with myself. And the thing that started to change everything, my mentor said, the next time your ego tells you to go kill yourself, tell it to shut up. Don't let your mind have any room to tell you those things. They're just thoughts. They're not truths. And that was it. just because I was having these thoughts didn't mean I needed to entertain them, no less believe them. That was it. I always knew my mind, my ego was my greatest inner bully. My mind is my abuser, my destroyer. And even though I had made great progress with it, I had to stop letting it run the show once and for all. I had to take my power back. So I did. So when I got back to Sedona, I swallowed my pride. I called one of my students, one of the people I had incorrectly taught to process emotions, but had also figured it out. And I picked her brain for 2 hours. I wanted to get inside of her body to understand how I was inefficiently processing my own. And I got there. She helped me get there. Something clicked with the way she reflected her process to me. And while I was embarrassed, admittedly, that my own student had done something better than me, I learned that humility was way more healing. She met me with grace and understanding, and it truly helped me see what I needed to do differently so I could start making the changes to my practice that I needed to make. And it made all the difference. It helped empower me to make the changes I needed to make within myself. And as I put the practices then into place, I could see my inner world starting to shift quickly in order to feel better. But I think maybe most importantly, I learned that I needed a process to help me be with my shame. I had so much shame. It's like a lifetime of shame that I was carrying around with me. I think the prevailing emotion in my life, arguably. But it always felt far too heavy to be present with. It was way too much to hold without my thoughts and without my ego. My ego was protecting me from having to feel the depth of shame that felt too overwhelming to be with. It felt unsafe to be with that shame. And I had to figure out a way to be present with my shame in a way that I knew I was safe to feel all the feels. And now, standing on the other side of that experience, I can say that I now know there are ways to feel safe as we lean into deep and uncomfortable emotions, especially the ones that feel like they're too much to carry alone. I learned that you have to set boundaries with your ego. You have to get bigger than the voice that tells you that you're not enough, because it's a lie. You are always enough. You are worthy right here, right now, as you are in your messiness. But we forget to remember that because we allow ourselves to identify with all of our negative thoughts. And when we believe those lies about ourselves, it takes us right out of our integrity. It distances us from the truth of who we really are, and it keeps us from living authentically. You know, your inner child hears every single thought you think. So if you feel like you don't know how to show up for you, show up for that inner child. Pretend that you're talking to that little being within you. Because the mind is always going to keep barking, but you can train it. You can learn to be still. You can learn to choose peace. You can learn to quiet the mind. I never thought I'd get here, but I did. And I promise you, no matter how dark things may feel sometimes, there is always a way out. But the way out does require us to take great responsibility. Nobody can fight this fight for you. And when we are in the depths of our despair, I know how hard it can feel to pull yourself out of it. You feel like you've got no fuel left in the tank to do the work to pull yourself out. But I promise you, spirit will buoy you while you climb. We just need to be willing to take responsibility for making the changes. Spirit helped me, people helped me, and I helped me. People can teach us how to fight our egos, but ultimately, you're the only one who can do the actual work, because the practice is in these micro decisions, in these micro moments every single day, where you choose to align with your high self and choose not to believe the mind. So now I want to leave you to reflect on this. What kind of home are you living in? Have you built something beautiful or abundant on the outside, but inside it's barren? Or does your home reflect some other mirror for you? Is your home peaceful or is it chaotic? Because I had literally manufactured a home. I had this sparkly, sexy life on the outside, and inside I was hollow. I was punishing myself. I was freezing and starving and aching in shame. I was disconnected from myself and my emotions, even though I was under the illusion that I was connected. And I never let anyone see that. And that's the truth. But what I can see now is this. You can have your dream life right in front of you. You can be exactly where you're supposed to be, and it might look nothing like what you wanted and still be absolutely everything you need. I can see now that Sedona had to be a pressure cooker. It needed to hold my feet to the fire. And as Sedona herself told me when I left, we needed to polish you so that you could shine brighter. And while it was deeply painful, it was messy, it was humbling, it was unraveling, and I can see that I had been living in a home within myself that I had built on approval. I was living in a home built on needing others to tell me I was good, I was worthy, I was enough. I was living in a home built on comparison, measuring my worth against someone else's version of success, measuring my worth against someone else's version of happiness. And when that validation disappeared, when no one else was there to mirror back who I was, I crashed and burned. Because the home I had built was manufactured out of beliefs and programs that weren't even mine. I was operating from a place of never enough, never measuring up, from the belief that if I just worked harder, do more, be more, effort more, rest less, then I'll be enough. Then things will go my way. And none of that was true, but it is what I believed. But it wasn't the truth. So Sedona stripped me bare. It left me empty, barren, hollow. But it left me that way so that I could rebuild on something real. I needed to create a new home within myself, one that could actually withstand life, one rooted in true safety, in deep security. And now looking back, I can see that the very first step was confronting the unsafe home I had built within myself. Because here's the truth, believing your inner bully doesn't create safety. Letting your mind run wild, beating you up, telling you lies, chasing approval, chasing perfection, that doesn't create safety. That's not safety. That's just the illusion of safety. That's the comfort of old patterns, dysfunctional patterns. But living in those patterns only repeats the same painful cycles over and over and over again. And that doesn't lead to safety, that leads to suffering. So this part of my journey taught me that where real safety begins is when we take radical responsibility for how we show up for ourselves. When we stop marinating in our thoughts and start being present with the feelings underneath them. Safety begins when we create space for the full spectrum of our emotional experience. When we welcome every feeling, the rage, the grief, the shame, the longing, the fear, the hope, the despair, the depression, the disconnection, the excitement, the joy, welcome it all into the room. Sit with it. Listen to it. Let the emotions speak to you. That's where self-intimacy begins. That's where we start to build real closeness with ourselves. That's where we begin to trust again. That's where we rise into our truth and come back into integrity with who we really are. That's what creates a safe and loving home inside. So I'll ask you this again. What kind of home have you built? What kind of home are you living in right now? What kind of home do you want to live in? Because you deserve one that feels like safety. You deserve one that feels like warmth and like love and a big hug. You deserve one that feels peaceful. Make no mistake, you are worth it. You matter so deeply, and you deserve to build a life that is so aligned, it feels like coming home. But first, to do that, your true self, your real self, has to matter more than the perceived safety of your wounding. That's my invitation to you. So until next time, bye for now. Thank you so much for listening to the Guided Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, I would be so grateful if you would share it with a friend or even leave me a review so we can ensure that it makes its way into the ears of listeners who need to hear these messages most. Until next time, may you remember how guided you truly are.